they've got years of misery ahead of them, to be very blunt. I am trying to speak truth to power because I think it's an accurate statement. I did two papers on Greece, one in 2009 and one in 2011. Because I'm an empirical numbers guy, I only use public data, and I'm talking data from the IMF, from their country analysis reports, as well as from the European Central Bank. There is superb and voluminous data available on Greece. Let's just put some big picture onto this first. Greece is very small as a percentage of the European Union, no matter how you slice or dice it. It's about 11 million people out of 500 million people in the European Union. I'm not just talking the Eurozone now, because Greece is both in the European Union and in the Eurozone. Its GDP is about $230 billion. Its indebtedness right now is about 1.5 times GDP, so somewhere around 180%, which is not in some countries like Japan, because Japan's much larger. It can bear an indebtedness of that great magnitude. But the problems in Greece go far beyond the indebtedness. In fact, I argue the indebtedness is not the problem in Greece. It's the symptom of the underlying diseases in Greece. And I have been to Greece, by the way, and 3 years ago, and I've studied it just because it's a fascinating case study in currency unions, which we do talk about in business schools, of course, in economics as well. And but suffice to say, and I'll just sort of get right to the point, I am one of those people that don't believe Greece should ever have joined the Eurozone. They should have joined the European Union, but not the Eurozone. And I've said that to my Polish students. I just came back from teaching in the Polish Canadian EMBA in Poland. You know, if you're a smaller developing country and you are not as dynamic and productive as the larger countries in the currency agreement, and of course I'm talking about Germany, my advice is you should never, ever join a currency union. So this has nothing to do with, you know, do you like Greece or do you not like Greece? No country that has significantly lower productivity than other partners in the currency agreement should ever join that currency agreement. Canada should never join the US dollar because Canada is 25% less productive per worker than the average US worker. StatsCan data. The reason why is that when you give up your currency, and then I'll get back to Greece, the main part of Greece. When you give up your currency, you give up your shock absorbers. And the currency is just like the shock absorbers on a car. You can drive down the road in a car where the shocks are broken. I've done it when I was younger and poor and couldn't afford to replace my shocks. And it's a very rough ride because the shock absorbers absorb the shocks. We're seeing that right now in Canada. The oil shock has been, a large part of it has been absorbed through the Canadian dollar depreciating. And so all kinds of people have been saying doom, gloom, Canada's going to fail, you know, terrible things, because they don't understand the role of a floating exchange rate acting as a shock absorber. Greece gave up their shock absorber. They are when they joined, and I've got the data from the ECB in 2001 when they joined, Greece was somewhere around 35 to 40% less productive per worker hour than the Germans and some of the other Northern European countries. When you give up your shock absorber, there's only one way to rebalance to remain competitive so you can still export stuff to those countries, and that is savage austerity. Greece has been going through savage austerity for the economy to try to become more competitive. It has worked to a degree at great suffering. So I don't deny, and I agree with Merkel. She says it's working. But my response to policy analysts and economists is, sure, it's working, but you know, it's the old General Westmoreland in Vietnam. We had to destroy the village to save the village. In other words, they've had to perform radical surgery on Greece to try to save Greece. And I maintained then, I maintain now, I still think it's in the long-term interest of Greece and Portugal to exit the Eurozone, take the hit in the short run. Everyone agrees their currency would fall by probably 50%. But then they would become very competitive. And then tourism would flood back in and their exports would increase. And then in a year or two, they would adjust and come back, as Argentina did after the 2001 peso crisis. So there are solutions there, but now to come back to your big question, what's going on in Greece? Greece is facing, let's be blunt, hell for the next 10 years or so, whether they stay in or exit the euro. I still think they should exit the euro because then they could, as I said, become more competitive with a shock absorber called the drachma currency. They've decided to remain in, and that's going to force those choices on them. Not only savage austerity, but more importantly, and what we haven't talked about up until this moment, is that the problems in Greece go far beyond the problems of most other countries in the European Union. That is to say, they were massively uncompetitive for a whole bunch of reasons before they joined the euro. It's well known their tax collection system is a shambles. Their property system of recording property, the land title system, is a shambles. The unions, and I'm not saying this as an anti-union statement, but the unions are unbelievably strong, and they practice savage protectionism to keep out foreign competition, which ensures that the firms become less and less competitive. So that exacerbates their problem. They had a massive overstaffing in the Greek public sector. The Federal Public Service of Greece was over 1 million people. In a country of 11 million, just to compare and contrast to Canada, 35 million, and we've got 300,000 in our public service. We're 3.5 times larger than Greece, and we have 1/3 the public service of Greece. So there were all kinds of problems in Greece. Let's call them problems of public administration, problems of declining infrastructure, inadequate infrastructure, massive protectionism. And so they have to reach, and the IMF has been making this argument consistently, they have to restructure their economy, whether they remain in the euro or exit the euro. And of course, there's a large number of people in Greece that don't want to accept this prescription to develop a stronger and better Greece in the future.